In a tense public hearing at the Senate, Senator Adam Schiff mocked White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, aiming to belittle her in front of the public. But Leavitt, with sharp confidence, fired back with a powerful statement, completely turning the tables, leaving Schiff speechless, and the entire hearing room stunned. Her words quickly shook American media. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The atmosphere in the hearing room at the Washington Capitol was suffocatingly intense. Cameras were ready to record, spotlights illuminating the typically cold, solemn space, now seemingly primed for a heated showdown. The hearing was supposed to be a routine accountability session for the administration, but everyone sensed a confrontation was about to erupt. Karoline Leavitt, White House press secretary, sat upright, her eyes sharp and confident, facing the committee. She represented President Donald Trump's administration with steadfast calm. Across from her, Senator Adam Schiff leaned back confidently in his chair, flashing a sly smile, gearing up to launch his verbal daggers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Schiff began in a mocking, challenging tone, "how does it feel to be a young press secretary, constantly parroting President Trump's words like a hired spokesperson?" A few chuckles echoed, and the room's tension spiked. Leavitt didn't flinch. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every expression. Silence blanketed the room. Schiff leaned forward, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Miss Leavitt, do you even understand what you're doing here? Or are you just a young girl trying to defend Trump?" The room held its breath, but Leavitt remained composed. She blinked slowly, then looked straight at Schiff. Her lips twitched, and though she hadn't spoken yet, everyone sensed something monumental was coming. Schiff smirked smugly, as if he held all the cards. "Miss Leavitt," he continued, voice thick with arrogance, "perhaps if you spent less time posting on social media and more time learning the responsibilities of a press secretary, you'd know how to answer here." Laughter from a few senators echoed in the marble-lined room. Reporters scribbled furiously. The cameras zoomed in again. Leavitt glanced briefly at the observation area where President Trump sat, his face expressionless. Secret Service agents stood motionless behind him. First Lady Melania Trump, seated beside her husband, watched Leavitt with subtle admiration. Leavitt didn't blink. She slowly turned to the audience, her voice sharp but calm. "I came here today to talk about the truth," Leavitt said firmly. "But it seems some people here wouldn't recognize the truth even if it stood right in front of them." Her words silenced the room for a moment. Schiff glared, smirking. "The truth from you? Please go ahead, Miss Leavitt." Leavitt gave a slight smile, then reached for a document from the stack in front of her. A thick sheet bearing an official seal. "I wasn't planning to bring this up," she said softly, pointedly. "But since we're talking about the truth..." She slid the paper forward, her eyes locked on Schiff. All eyes turned to Leavitt. The cameras followed. Senators leaned forward. Schiff's smile froze. Leavitt tapped the document lightly, then spoke, her voice clear and cold, like a sharp blade. "Senator Schiff, you can mock my youth, but your name is in a federal investigation report regarding $12 million in misused COVID relief funds." The hearing room in the Capitol shook as if Karoline Leavitt's words still echoed. Melania Trump, from the observation area, whispered excitedly, "She actually did it." Adam Schiff sank back in his chair, scrambling for a response, but no sound came out. Everyone in the room now saw what Leavitt saw, the truth, and all of America was about to witness it. Chaos was the only word to describe the atmosphere. The committee chairman pounded the gavel, shouting, "Order! Order in the room!" But Leavitt's words lingered like smoke after a fire. Schiff's face twitched. His lips moved, but no words emerged. His hands trembled. Reporters scrambled to take notes. Phones buzzed non-stop. Breaking news alerts spread nationwide. Caroline Leavitt exposes Schiff in live hearing. Senator Ellen Harper whispered to a colleague, "What did she just do?" Senator Michael Tran, stunned, replied, "She did it." Leavitt stood firm, confident, holding the document aloft. "This document isn't just evidence," she said, her voice cutting. "It's a mirror. For every American watching, this is what happens when leaders mock instead of serve. When they think no one is watching." The eyes of a young aide from Virginia, who always admired Leavitt, welled up with tears. Schiff suddenly stood up. "This is a fabrication, sheer desperation," he shouted. "You're trying to save face because you're just—" Leavitt cut him off, her voice soft but firm. "No, Senator Schiff, I'm just speaking the truth. Something you haven't done in a long time." The room buzzed with murmurs. This wasn't just a moment. It was a turning point. The storm was just beginning. The cameras kept rolling. Millions watched via CNN, Fox, Newsmax, and even international channels switching to live coverage. Schiff reached for his water glass, his hand trembling. "I demand a recess," he yelled, but his voice cracked. Leavitt didn't sit down. She opened her folder, pulling out another document. "This isn't just your name, Senator Schiff," she said. "These are bank transfer receipts, relief funds meant for small businesses during the pandemic, but you funneled them into offshore shell accounts." Gasps echoed again. A reporter dropped their microphone. A senator covered their face, head bowed. From the observation area, Melania Trump whispered, "She's not stopping." President Trump sat motionless, his gaze cold, as if he'd been waiting for this moment all along. Schiff looked around, his face pale. "I didn't know about that money." Leavitt's voice was almost gentle now. "You knew. You signed the papers. You hired family members to run the shell company. I didn't want to expose this here, but when you mocked me in front of all of America," she turned to the cameras, "you mocked every American who still believes in honesty." Schiff slumped into his chair as if struck down. This was no longer just a hearing. This was a reckoning. In Virginia, a mother of 3 who lost her job during the pandemic wiped tears as she watched Leavitt speak the truth. In an Oregon hospital break room, a nurse paused, feeding a patient, turning up the TV volume. In a small Nebraska diner, the air went still. Grown men stared at the screen, choking with emotion. In the hearing room, Leavitt continued, "You didn't steal from billionaires, Senator Schiff. You stole from single mothers, from veterans, from people who still had hope." Schiff tried to stand, but his knees shook. An aide rushed to support him. Leavitt stepped forward, not as a politician, but as a young woman representing millions of Americans. "I'm not saying this to hurt you," she said. "I'm saying it because the truth still matters. You tried to humiliate me, but you only reminded me who I'm fighting for." A tear rolled down Leavitt's cheek. That moment broke the room. Even Senator Daniel Brooks, who once doubted Leavitt, wiped his eyes. All of America, through their screens, was not just shocked by the scandal, but by the courage they thought had vanished. The news spread like wildfire. Within minutes, the clip of Leavitt exposing Schiff went viral on social media. Reporters swarmed outside the Capitol steps, shouting questions. In the hearing room, Leavitt sat back down, calm amid the storm that had just passed, though an undercurrent still simmered. She whispered to her aide, "I wasn't trying to win. I just wanted the truth to be spoken." From the observation area, President Trump leaned toward Melania Trump, his voice low. "Honey, that's what a real leader looks like. She doesn't shout. She stands firm." On the hearing floor, Schiff refused to speak. His aides whispered, sweating, their phones buzzing incessantly with messages from lawyers, donors, and panicking allies. Leavitt didn't smile. Her heart was heavy. She knew this wasn't just politics. It was about real people's lives. In the hallway, a janitor, an elderly Vietnam veteran named Samuel, stopped to shake Leavitt's hand. "You did what I fought for in Vietnam," he said. "Yes, ma'am. You spoke the truth when it was hardest." Leavitt, the young press secretary, quietly nodded. Because this wasn't about praise. It was about waking up America. At her office, Leavitt's phone buzzed non-stop. Calls came from governors, senators, pastors, factory workers, and mothers. One call was from a teacher in a small Idaho town. "I showed my students your clip," the teacher said. One cried, saying they finally saw someone stand up for people like their dad, who lost his job and never got relief funds. Leavitt's eyes blurred. She turned to her aide. "Get in touch with the Justice Department. I want them to open an investigation. Schiff's actions hurt real families. They deserve justice." The aide hesitated. "This will start a war in Congress." Leavitt stood tall, resolute. "Then let it come." Outside, Schiff tried to leave the hearing room but was swarmed by reporters. "Do you deny the evidence? Did you misuse relief funds?" Schiff snapped, "No comment," but the panic in his voice said it all. Inside, senators slowly filed out, but a young congresswoman, Hannah Coleman, lingered. She approached Leavitt, eyes red. "My father was a truck driver," she said. "He died during the pandemic. His company got no relief. You just answered the question I've carried for 3 years." Leavitt said nothing, just opened her arms, and Coleman hugged her, sobbing. That night, as Washington buzzed, Leavitt returned to her office and found a handwritten envelope with no return address. She opened it slowly. "Dear Miss Leavitt, my name is Emma. I'm 10. My mom cried watching you on TV. She said you made her believe again. My dad used to say, 'No one in Washington cares,' but I think you do. Thank you for making my mom smile. She hasn't smiled in so long." Leavitt folded the letter, pressed it to her chest, deeply moved. She thought of the people in small towns, shuttered factories, those who felt forgotten. This was never about power. It was about people like Emma and her mom. She turned on the TV. Schiff was denying everything, calling the documents fake. But this time, America didn't believe him. Leavitt whispered, "I didn't break the system. I just held up a mirror." Outside, crowds gathered, not to divide, but to hope. They waved flags, held signs saying, "Thank you, Caroline." America was moved. As dusk fell over Washington, church bells rang from a small chapel near the Capitol. Inside, a few people gathered, not to pray, but to reflect. On the screen, Leavitt's words played again. An older man, Jacob, a former Montana miner, watched, leaning on his cane. His relief funds vanished during the pandemic while politicians argued. Hearing Leavitt speak the truth, he broke down. "I thought no one would speak for people like us anymore." Caroline Leavitt sat in her dim Capitol office, reviewing documents, ensuring no detail was exaggerated or wrong. Her phone buzzed. "President Trump called." "Okay," Caroline replied, voice steady. "I didn't mean to go that far." Trump chuckled. "That's exactly why it worked." A pause, then he added, "Get ready. They'll come for you now." Leavitt looked out the window at the crowd below. "I know," she said, unafraid. The next morning, Leavitt's image was everywhere, not in attack ads, but on homemade posters, digital billboards, and posts by mothers online. A Nevada mom wrote, "My son asked what honesty looks like. I showed him Caroline Leavitt's clip." Her quote spread, "Senator Schiff, you can mock my youth, but your name is in a federal investigation report regarding $12 million in misused COVID relief funds." High schoolers quoted it. In Alabama barber shops and California boardrooms, Leavitt's courage was the talk. But in Capitol offices, panic spread like a virus. Schiff's team was in disarray. Lawyers swarmed, allies quietly pulled back. Leavitt's chief aide walked in, eyes wide. "Ma'am, the Oversight Committee just called an emergency session. They want you there." Leavitt nodded. Then we go. The aide warned. Schiff might retaliate. Leavitt replied, voice firm. I'm not afraid of that. I'm afraid of what happens if we stop telling the truth. Then her mother called. The kids saw you on TV, she whispered, voice trembling. They said you looked like a superhero. Leavitt's hand shook, not from fear, but from the weight of her responsibility. The truth wasn't just about Schiff anymore. It was about every American who felt silenced. Outside the Capitol, the protesting crowd grew. But this wasn't a typical protest. No shouting, no angry signs, just faces, tears, and hope. A woman named Sarah from Wisconsin held a photo of her husband and 2 kids. She'd driven all night to be there. She approached a Capitol staffer. Please give this letter to Miss Leavitt. En route to the Oversight Committee room, a security guard handed Leavitt the letter. She opened it. My husband died after our small business was denied emergency relief. Later, we learned the money went to shell companies. Today, you showed me justice still exists in this country. Thank you. You changed our lives. Leavitt stood still. Her aide whispered, Ma'am, they're waiting. She wiped her eyes and walked in. The Oversight Committee room was tense. Schiff sat at the far end, pale, rigid. Cameras rolled. Leavitt took her seat. No script, no prepared speech, just her and a nation watching. Outside, Sarah blended into the crowd of strangers, crying, not from pain, but from something deeper. Hope. The room quieted as Leavitt sat down. Cameras clicked. The nation held its breath. Schiff didn't look at her, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. The committee chair, Senator Margaret Evans, cleared her throat. Miss Leavitt, before we begin, would you like to make a statement? Leavitt stood slowly. No podium, no cards, just her hands clasped in front of her. I didn't come here for drama, she said softly. I didn't come to play politics. I came because the American people deserve to know someone sees them. She paused, looking directly at Schiff. We sit here because people entrusted us with their pain, their taxes, their dreams. But when that money was stolen, their dreams turned to debt, and no one answered them. She held up Sarah's letter. This woman isn't asking for revenge. She just wants the truth. I owe her that. We all do. Some committee members bowed their heads, ashamed. Senator Laura Mitchell, a longtime ally of Adam Schiff, leaned forward, her voice challenging. Miss Leavitt, are you implying criminal allegations? Caroline Leavitt didn't flinch. I'm not implying, she replied, voice sharp. I'm submitting evidence. She raised a thick red folder, carefully sealed. Inside are documents, timestamps, transfer records, and sworn testimony from Schiff's former staff. Evidence that he funneled emergency relief funds into shell organizations controlled by his own family. The room erupted in gasps. Cameras zoomed in. Schiff's mouth opened, but no words came out. Leavitt continued, voice calm. This isn't personal. It's the truth. If we ignore it, we tell every struggling American that corruption wins. Senator Michael Tran wiped his eyes, moved. Leavitt turned to the observation area. I know this might cost me dearly, but I didn't become press secretary to make friends. I did it so people like Sarah, like Emma, like everyone in forgotten small towns, are finally heard. The room fell silent. For the first time in decades, the Senate hearing room carried a sacred weight. Leavitt stood there, not as a politician, but as a patriot, and America, through their screens, was awash in tears. Schiff suddenly stood, face flushed, trembling. This is a smear campaign, he shouted. All lies, no legal weight. Leavitt didn't respond, just quietly handed the red folder to committee chair Margaret Evans. She looked down, then slowly passed it to the committee clerk. I propose a formal investigation, she said, voice grave. I second, Senator Emily Carter called out. Schiff's chair creaked as he sank back. "This is a witch hunt," he yelled. "You're all insane." Leavitt calmly turned to him. "No, Senator Schiff. This is justice." Reporters surged as Schiff bolted from the room, his footsteps echoing in the hall. A symbol of this moment. He wasn't fleeing Leavitt. He was fleeing the truth. Outside the Capitol, the crowd grew, spanning races and classes. Some waved flags, others held signs. "Thank you, Caroline." A woman, Maria from Idaho, lifted her young child toward a screen, whispering, "She's why you can have a better future." For the first time in ages, America cried together, not from pain, but from a quiet statement that shook the nation. In a small Georgia town's ER, Nurse Sophia Lee stood by an elderly patient's bed, IV drip in hand. The TV in the corner was muted until she saw Leavitt's face. She turned up the volume. The moment Leavitt presented the red folder replayed. Schiff's collapse, the room's silence, her singular statement. Sophia sat on the bed's edge, trembling. Her brother lost everything in the pandemic, his relief application denied because funds ran dry. Now she knew where some of that money went. The elderly patient, voice frail, whispered, "That girl, she's speaking for us." Sophia nodded. "She is," she cried, not from anger but relief. In a room of beeping machines, hope crept through the TV screen. She texted her sister one word: "Watch." Leavitt hung up after Trump's call, sitting down, feeling the weight of a nation's pain on her shoulders. "If they matter, if the truth matters," she whispered. Trump paused, then said, "America needed a moment, and you delivered it." She didn't feel powerful. She felt heavy, but ready. Because for the first time in years, someone stood where no one dared. Across America, something rare was happening. People didn't just watch, they felt. In a Louisiana diner, an older man, Henry, stood from his seat, whispering, "That girl Caroline has the soul of a justice warrior." In an Oregon farm, a family rarely aligned on politics gathered around a laptop, silently crying. In schools, teachers paused lessons to discuss truth and courage. At truck stops, factory floors, living rooms, and churches, Leavitt's words echoed. "Senator Schiff, you can mock my youth, but your name is in a federal investigation report regarding $12 million in misused COVID relief funds." It wasn't just about Schiff anymore. It was about every forgotten American, working mothers, veterans, teens fearing the world had no place for them. Leavitt remained in her office, hands clasped tightly, silent. A janitor, Mr. Thomas, passed by, stopped, and greeted her. She stood, shaking his hand. "Thank you," she said. "No," he replied, eyes misty. "Thank you for making us feel human." That night, as cities lit up with headlines and hashtags, America began to believe in itself again. Washington settled into a fragile quiet, and another envelope appeared at Leavitt's office. No stamp, no address, just her name, handwritten in blue ink. She opened it slowly. Inside was a photo of a young soldier, James, in uniform holding a baby. The letter, written in shaky handwriting, read, "Miss Leavitt, my husband died waiting for aid." Your opponent blocked it. "He served with honor, but our paperwork was lost." Then I learned millions went to shell companies. Today, watching you speak, I felt seen for the first time. You gave my husband dignity even though he's gone. Please don't stop. Leavitt placed the letter on her desk as if it were sacred. She looked at the soldier's face, standing still, angry but resolute. This was no longer politics. It was about what we owe those who sacrificed everything. She wouldn't let them be forgotten again. Outside the Capitol, the crowd grew. Not shouting, just present. Among them was Ethan, a 10-year-old in a wheelchair, a cancer survivor from rural Nevada. His mother brought him there. Ethan wrote a letter for Leavitt but couldn't deliver it in person, so he quietly held a sign. "My hospital almost closed. Thank you for fighting." A news camera captured him. The clip went viral nationwide. By morning, all of America knew Ethan's name. In her office, an aide reported, "Ma'am, there's a boy out there with a sign. It's going viral." Leavitt paused. "What's his name?" "Ethan." She stood. Minutes later, she stepped outside, past security barriers. No speech, no stage. She found Ethan, knelt down, and looked him in the eyes. "You're why I stand up," she said. "You're the real warrior." Ethan smiled, eyes shining. "You didn't yell," he said. "You just told the truth." Leavitt hugged him. Cameras captured it. By dusk, the photo of Leavitt and Ethan holding hands hung on walls in homes, classrooms, and churches across America. That evening, the Senate committee reconvened, but the atmosphere had shifted. Schiff's chair was empty. Leavitt entered slowly, no tie, just an American flag pin and neatly folded notes. Everyone stood as she entered, not out of protocol, but respect. No one spoke until Senator Anna Coleman whispered, "Miss Leavitt, would you like to speak?" Caroline Leavitt stood in the Capitol hearing room, her gaze steady. "I didn't come to destroy anyone," she said, voice low but clear. "I came to protect those who no longer have a voice in this room." She took a deep breath. "I'm not proud of what happened today, but I'm proud that America finally looked in the mirror." Then she did something no one expected. She sat down, completely silent for a minute. No sound, no politics, just stillness for the forgotten lives, stolen dreams, and voices drowned in noise. In that moment, even the most skeptical senator felt something break inside. Because silence, true silence, sometimes echoes louder than any speech. At dawn, before the Senate session resumed, a man stood quietly on the Capitol steps. He was David Marshall, a Vietnam veteran. His jacket was faded, his shoes worn, but he stood tall with dignity. In his hands was a folded flag. Passers-by moved on, unaware why he stood motionless. Inside, Leavitt reviewed files, stories of ordinary Americans, unpaid, unheard, unseen. An aide entered. "Ma'am, there's a veteran outside. He doesn't want media, just a moment with you." Leavitt stood and walked out. David saluted her, military style. Leavitt returned the gesture. He spoke, voice choked. "I buried my brother after the pandemic. His business went under. The government blamed the system. But now I know the system was rigged." He handed her the flag. "He served too. This was his. But today, you deserve it more than anyone I've seen in decades." Leavitt's voice broke. "I can't take this." David replied, "You already have, by speaking for those who are gone." Leavitt clutched the flag to her chest, eyes blurred with tears. Silence enveloped the Capitol again. This time, one of reverence. Leavitt returned to the hearing room, flag still in hand. Schiff remained absent, but the nation watched more closely than ever. She approached the podium, then paused. "I have one final file," she said, raising a yellow envelope. "This one's different. It's not just about stolen money. It's about lives destroyed and a cover-up deeper than we thought." Murmurs spread through the room. Chair Margaret Evans signaled for order. Leavitt opened the envelope, pulling out phone logs, private emails, and whistleblower testimonies. She looked straight at the cameras. "This file shows Senator Schiff's office delayed relief funds to targeted districts for political retaliation, hurting American families just for headlines." Gasps echoed. A senator stood. "That's a crime." Leavitt nodded. "It is, and it happened. I don't need to shout. I just need the truth to speak." She placed the file on the table and stepped back. That moment, not when Schiff mocked her, not when she responded, but when the truth stood taller than anyone in the room, the reaction rippled instantly. Across America, tears flowed like rivers. In Ohio nursing homes, Texas school cafeterias, Maine fire stations, pickup trucks parked along country roads. This was no longer politics. It was about betrayal, and finally being heard. A man in Missouri knelt in his kitchen, sobbing. My father begged for help and no one answered. Now someone has spoken it loud. A Seattle teacher replayed Leavitt's words. Students didn't look away. In living rooms, people from all political sides sat together, not arguing, but crying. Leavitt's actions weren't scripted. No political theater. It was truth delivered calmly, fearlessly, by a young woman with nothing to gain and everything to lose. As the sun set over Washington, a girl in Arizona wrote in her diary, "When I grow up, I want to be brave like Caroline Leavitt." Her father smiled for the first time in years. Adam Schiff's chair in the Capitol hearing room remained empty, cold, abandoned. A silent symbol of a political empire crumbling before their eyes. News broadcasts nationwide repeated, "Deliberate delay of emergency relief funds. Abuse of power in a national crisis. Unforgivable." Washington simmered with pressure. The Ethics Committee announced an emergency vote, but Caroline Leavitt was no longer the focus. She was at a hospital, visiting someone unexpected. Sarah, the widowed woman who sent her husband's photo. Sarah, exhausted after a prayer vigil, was asleep, but her 10-year-old son Noah was awake, sitting with a coloring book. He looked up. "You're the one who told the truth?" Leavitt knelt, smiling gently. "I just said what your mom already knew." Noah grinned, handing her a crayon. "Keep this in case you need to color the truth again." Leavitt took it, moved. For the second time in 24 hours, the White House press secretary shed tears. Back at the Senate, the hearing room was packed for an unscheduled session. Ethics Committee Chair, Senator Margaret Evans, stood, clearing her throat. Based on irrefutable evidence and verified testimony from federal auditors, we are moving forward with formal charges against Senator Adam Schiff for abuse of power and obstructing emergency relief funds. Murmurs spread through the room. She continued, "We also commend Miss Caroline Leavitt for her moral courage, restraint, and putting country above party." Leavitt had just returned in time to hear. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Senators stood one by one, even those who once opposed her. A rare applause echoed in a room long divided. Outside, news of the charges spread like thunder. Americans cried, not because Schiff was exposed, but because someone finally stood up when it mattered most. As Leavitt quietly left the room, Mr. Thomas, the janitor she met earlier, whispered, "You didn't just speak for us. You reminded us integrity still lives here." Leavitt nodded, hand on her heart, and walked on. By evening, church bells in small towns in Nebraska, Georgia, and Virginia rang unprompted. Families gathered around TVs, not for scandal, but for something sacred, hope. In a Mississippi town, a mother, Clara, prayed at her dinner table. "God bless the woman who spoke for us." In rural Idaho, farmers paused work, raising flags higher. In Washington, candles were lit on the Capitol steps, not for mourning but for gratitude, because in one day, the truth had truly come alive. In her office, Leavitt sat quietly. No press, no noise, just her and Noah's crayon. She opened a notebook, wrote one word, "Remember." She didn't care about praise or hashtags. She cared about the promise in her words. "Senator Schiff, you can mock my youth, but your name is in a federal investigation report regarding $12 million in misused COVID relief funds." That statement didn't just expose one man. It awakened a nation. As night fell over Washington, America found something worth crying for: the truth. The next morning, America woke up different. Anger faded, giving way to healing. Radios paused their bickering. Schools held moments of silence. Mayors in Oregon and Alabama quoted Leviticus. Even comedians stopped joking, because this truth was too sacred. Leavitt stepped into the White House briefing room. Cameras flashed. No prepared speech, just a folded paper in hand. She read slowly. "The truth doesn't need a microphone. It just needs someone brave enough to speak it." She looked at the reporters. "I didn't expose Schiff for revenge. I did it because silence is killing this country. I spoke for the small towns, the hospital rooms, the drivers, the mothers, the people who have nothing left but hope." Her words didn't spark division. They rekindled America's heart. Caroline Leavitt stood in the White House briefing room, her gaze steady before a sea of reporters. She folded the paper, her voice warm and low. "The truth only needs one person brave enough to whisper it." She emphasized, "I didn't expose Adam Schiff out of hatred. I did it because silence is killing this country. I spoke for the small towns, the hospital rooms, the truck drivers, the widows, the children who have nothing left but hope." She paused, took a gentle breath, and concluded, "And I'd do it again if I had to." The clip spread everywhere, from America to abroad. Leavitt's words didn't ignite division. They restored what America thought it had lost, its heart. That night, Leavitt quietly returned to the Capitol. No cameras, no press, just her. She passed Schiff's empty chair, paused, looked at it long and whispered, "This was once a seat of arrogance." She walked on. Outside the hearing room, Ethan, the boy from Nevada, appeared again in his wheelchair, his mother pushing him, holding a folded drawing. Leavitt knelt down. Ethan handed her the picture, her standing on a mountaintop with tiny stick figures below holding signs reading, "Truth, Hope, My Dad, My Town, Justice." Leavitt's eyes welled up. "I didn't climb this mountain alone," she whispered. "All of you pushed me up." Ethan smiled. "You didn't yell. You just stood strong." Leavitt hugged him gently but firmly, then stood, gazing at the Capitol dome. "I didn't come here to win," she whispered. "I came to serve." Those words weren't politics. They were pure, true. In less than a day, everything had changed. Leavitt returned to Virginia that night. No parade, no spotlight, just family and quiet. She sat on the porch, a soft breeze blowing, staring at the stars. A knock came at the door. Sarah, the widow, stood there with her son, Noah. "I had to thank you in person," Sarah said. Leavitt shook her head, moved. "I didn't do much." Sarah placed a hand on hers. "You gave a broken country a voice." Noah looked up. "You made my mom believe again." At that, Leavitt couldn't hold back. A tear rolled down, not for glory or politics, but for every letter, handshake, and hug from those who thought they were invisible. She had quietly carried them in her heart to the very end. Across America, Leavitt's moment touched every corner. In a Kentucky coffee shop, a waitress, Lisa, paused to watch TV, tears falling as Leavitt spoke of the forgotten. In a Wisconsin factory, workers gathered around a phone, sharing Leavitt's clip, feeling someone finally spoke for them. In Florida, an elementary teacher, Miss Elena, showed students the speech, asking, "What is courage?" A student replied, "It's Miss Caroline. She's not afraid." On social media, hashtags #Caroline Truth and #Leavitt Speaks kept spreading, with posts from youths, mothers, and veterans sharing their stories of the pandemic and loss. Leavitt didn't seek attention. She returned to work, representing the Trump administration, but her heart stayed with people like Sarah, Noah, Ethan. She kept Noah's crayon on her desk, a reminder of the promise she carried. President Trump, in a Truth Social post, called her the flame of truth, further isolating Schiff. Meanwhile, the Senate Ethics Committee accelerated its investigation into Schiff, with headlines blaring, "Leavitt ignites justice." But for Leavitt, justice wasn't the ultimate goal. It was about giving a voice back to the abandoned. In a small Georgia church, a pastor read a parishioner's letter thanking Leavitt for rekindling faith. In Montana, a group of students made posters of Leavitt, writing, "Thank you for fighting for us." In Washington, the crowd still gathered, not to protest, but to give thanks. A mother, Maria from Arizona, stood in the crowd, holding a photo of her son lost to the pandemic, telling a reporter, "Leavitt didn't just speak. She listened to us." Her words, like Leavitt's, didn't divide. They healed. Leavitt knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Opponents would attack. The press would scrutinize. But she wasn't afraid. She had chosen to stand for people like Ethan, Noah, and millions more. The story of Caroline Leavitt confronting Adam Schiff in a public Capitol hearing reflects profound issues of trust, honesty, and accountability in today's American society. Leavitt, with courage and resolve, exposed Schiff's misuse of relief funds, not for fame, but to protect forgotten people like Sarah, Noah, Ethan, and families in Virginia, Nevada, or Louisiana. Her actions, from presenting sharp evidence to a meaningful minute of silence, showed the power of truth spoken sincerely. Details like Noah's letter, Ethan's drawing, or the flag from veteran David underscore that truth isn't just a political tool. It's a bridge restoring trust between people and leaders. The lesson from this story can be applied to real life in America, where political polarization and distrust in the system are dividing communities. Learn from Leavitt. Speak the truth courageously, even when facing power, but do so with respect and purpose for others. In work, school, or family, each person can stand up for justice, as Leavitt did for those hurt by corruption. Listen to the stories of people like Sarah, who lost so much to an unjust system, and act to make change. Most importantly, as Leavitt did with the crayon and letter, hold fast to core values: honesty, empathy, and accountability, to heal and build a better America. Subscribe to join us in spreading stories of truth and courage, like Caroline Leavitt's. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video, where we continue to inspire and heal America.